Hello and welcome to Frost Over the World. Later in the programme, America's biographer Gore Vidal on Barack Obama, movie director James Ivory on the Cannes Film Festival and Merchant Ivory, the secret talks between Israel and Syria, and a look at the ever-increasing price of oil. And that's not all. But first, South Africa, the continent's richest country, but also its most unequal. If you have rich, you have inequality. This week, in a brutal reminder of times past, the front pages of all South Africa's newspapers were dominated by the picture of a man killed in a so-called necklace killing. The victim had a petrol-filled tyre put round his neck, which was then set on fire. It happened during widespread rioting aimed at foreign workers and migrants, especially, it seems, those people who fled, and there's a lot of them, from Robert Mugabe's regime in neighbouring Zimbabwe. At least 42 people are reported to have been killed. The army has been deployed to restore calm. And now thousands of migrants are desperately trying to flee from South Africa back to their own home countries, including, obviously, Zimbabwe. Not, one would have thought, a very hospitable retreat under Robert Mugabe. And around 1,000 migrants, certainly hundreds of migrants, have taken refuge in the Central Methodist Church in Johannesburg, where the bishop is Paul Verryn. And he joins me now from Johannesburg. Bishop Paul, how bad is the violence you've seen?
The violence is, in some respects, absolutely shocking. It was to be predicted, I think, in some respects, but it's been quite unprecedented in terms of the extent of the violence, particularly. And at times, does one say the quality of the violence or what actually gets done to people has been horrendous.
How many immigrants do you have now taking refuge at your church?
It probably is nearer to 2,000 than anything else. We did have about 1,300, and after Saturday, certainly more coming through every day.
And how many of them have experienced violence at the hands of fellow black Africans?
You know, it's like an epidemic of fear, actually. I haven't come across too many of them in the building who have been physically brutalized. But if one considers that we are dealing with people who are already vulnerable, they come from a situation where some of them have seen dreadful things, particularly the more recent stuff in Zimbabwe. And so they are very susceptible at the moment to any kind of threat on their lives. And of course, it's not just threats. There have certainly been more than 30 deaths, they think, and some of the assaults have been horrendous.
And we had pictures here of that necklace killing, which of course brought back memories of a different apartheid South Africa. It must be particularly sad, depressing, to see this being repeated now.
Yes, it's like a monster that's been asleep, you know, for more than a decade that has suddenly come to haunt us again. I think the thing about that necklacing that was even more devastating was that people stood around laughing while the person was burning. That is just profound in its brutality.
And so do you think that President Mbeki's leadership is needed to be more visible at this time?
We need the leaders of every political party to be distancing themselves from this horrendous business every day. It's no use just making a statement and then drifting off into the silence. We need political leaders to be giving the kind of indicators to those who are perpetuating this violence and perhaps think that they might be somehow doing the work of a political leader. They need to hear from those political leaders that this is outrageous and unacceptable.
But one of the main things that happened in the last few hours, overnight, has been that the story has switched unfortunately, the violence has switched to Cape Town. Now, in Cape Town, we're being joined by the leader of the official opposition, Helen Zille, and we'll go over to her straight away. Helen, we've heard here that the violence, some of the violence, although a little less against human beings and more against shops, but has switched to Cape Town. What do you understand the situation is?
Yes, that has unfortunately happened. We had emergency plans which are being rolled out, but unfortunately at about 4 or 5 locations at last count, we have had incidents of violence, mainly against property and mainly against shops owned by foreign nationals.
And does it look as though this is going to go on, or is it just hopefully a very much a passing phase?
I hope that it'll be a passing wave. That wave has still got a way to roll, but I'm hoping that it'll roll out and we will get on with picking up the pieces, analysing the causes and preventing it in future.
And Bishop Paul, who was talking to us earlier on, was appealing to politicians to do more, that it's urgent, must do more. And what do you think there is that you can do? Obviously, there's a lot that the government can do, and they're in the position of being responsible, but what is there you think you can do in this situation?
Well, I am the mayor of Cape Town, so I am in local government, and what I did was prepare an emergency plan centred around disaster management in the city of Cape Town. We immediately rolled that plan out the minute the first reports of violence came in. We set up a joint operations centre to provide humanitarian relief, to coordinate the efforts of the police, and to ensure that the entire disaster management network was on standby and activated, including all the volunteers. I myself spent much of the night in Dunoon, the place first hit by the violence, and I was able to speak to people. I hope I played a constructive role in calming tempers, and the Joint Operation Centre worked splendidly.
Well, that's very much good news. What do you feel, I mean, not just as mayor, but also as official leader of the opposition, do you feel the government is handling it right at the moment, doing enough?
Well, we're dealing with the symptoms of an explosion that has been a long time building up. Major problem in the policy towards Zimbabwe that aided the implosion of the economy and politics in that country, very porous borders, huge wave of people coming into South Africa, many not going through the official system having very little capacity to deal with genuine political refugees, the poor communities of South Africa bearing the brunt of that and the build-up over many years now.
And at the same time, obviously, in terms not just of the migrants, the immigrants, the refugees, I presume that the violent reaction, threatened reaction of black South Africans is linked up with the chasm between rich and poor. I mean, the story of South Africa in the past few years has been a miracle in many ways, but the gap between rich and poor is not closing, is it?
Well, the issue of xenophobic violence is rooted in the perception that the opportunities often seized by foreign nationals in South Africa, many here illegally, comes at the expense of poor South Africans. And that sets up the conundrum, that sets up the tinderbox, and it's the zero-sum game of opportunities. We would like to change that fundamentally. And of course, the retention of skills and capital in South Africa is a necessary condition to ensure that we get the investment and get the growth we need to help people out of poverty.
Thank you very much indeed, Helen, for joining us. That's very clear. We appreciate that very much indeed, and we hope there in your home city, of which you're mayor, that the troubles soon come to an end. Thank you very much. Our huge thanks there to Helen. And now, in a minute or two, Gore Vidal on the subject of Barack Obama and what he thinks of America today. Is he proud to be an American? Find out in a moment.